Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Friday and the final day of the Wellbeing Festival. My name's Dave Harrison. I'm going to hand over to our introducer in a moment to introduce our guests, and hopefully everyone is looking forward to the fantastic session all about managing sleep difficulties. I know I'm really looking forward to it. Please, for this session, please keep your cameras on and interact, because non-verbals are really fantastic. We can see the reactions, but please keep your microphones on mute unless you're being asking a question or being asked to come in and ask your question on your behalf. So the facilitators today, you've got myself, and behind the scenes we've got Dawn, who's managing the chat box for us. So all your questions, all your thoughts, all your ideas, all your concerns, all your worries, please pop in there, and Dawn will monitor that and ask them to our presenters towards the end of the session. Please note this is being recorded, so everyone can watch it later on, because it becomes a fantastic resource to share across the system, so everyone can watch it later. Like I said, use the chat box, or at the end raise the hand function if you want to join in, and please use the three dots down where you can play the transcript, so for those who are hard of hearing then can read what is being said. I'm going to hand over to Chris, who will introduce himself before introducing our two guest speakers, Nicola and Thomas. Over to you, Chris.
Thanks very much, Dave. My name's Chris Oakes. I'm the Director of HR and OD at Northamptonshire Healthcare Foundation Trust. In this workshop, Nicola and Thomas are going to talk to us about what sleep is, what can lead to difficulties with sleep, how this is maintained, and the importance of good sleep. We're also going to discuss stress and relaxation responses in terms of what they are and how they impact on our sleep. And we will then finish with an exercise that can help in triggering the relaxation response. I wanted to say I'm particularly excited to be able to come to this one. I certainly find a bit of challenge with my sleep, and I know when I get a really good night's sleep, I just feel so much better, so much more energized. So welcome to Nicola and Thomas, and I think they've got some great ideas and thoughts and insights to share with us, which I'm sure for all of us, for our health and well-being, can make a real difference. So without further ado, I shall hand over to them. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David and Chris, for the introduction. So just to introduce myself before we get started, my name's Tom Finnegan. I'm one of the assistant psychologists at IAP Talking Therapies. And I'll just let Nicola introduce herself before we get started.
Yeah, hello everyone, and thank you very much for joining us for this talk this morning. My name's Nicola Phillips. I'm from IAPT, just working in the long-term conditions team, which has newly been set up in IAPT at the moment, and I'm a CBT therapist.
So first of all, today we're just going to speak about what sleep is, because we all have an idea of what sleep is, but we don't know a lot of the specifics about it. So there's 4 stages of sleep, and you might have heard of a few of these already. So the first stage is a very light transitional sleep. So this is where we can first start to fall asleep. And then we have our stage 2, which becomes a bit more stable. We start to have our senses blocked, so it's harder to be woken. And then stage 3 is when we start to enter that deep sleep. So this is when our growth hormone is released, and most of this occurs during the first third of the night. And then last of all, we have our REM sleep. So this is where the dreaming occurs. This is almost where our mind starts to feel more rested, whereas the first 3 stages are more when the body starts to feel more rested and recuperated. And generally, those stages will be around 90 to 120 minutes. So a lot of you might notice that you can find yourself waking up maybe every hour and a half, every 2 hours. That's actually quite natural, as when one cycle of sleep ends, it's natural to have a period of wakefulness. So it's understanding that even if you do wake up and go back to sleep, that's actually a normal part of sleep. So a bit more about the 4 stages. So again, stage 1 is that kind of falling asleep, that light sleep. Stage 2, our body starts to slow down, our heart rate slows, body temperature starts to drop. And then stage 3 and 4, deep sleep starts to occur, muscle and tissue starts to repair, and REM, our rapid eye movement sleep, body's paralyzed, and that's where we start to have our dreams. So again, naturally around 90 to 120, 110 minutes. We generally have 4 to 6 cycles a night. So depending on how long your cycle is, that will depend on how many cycles you do have. And we do need to go through all 4 stages of this cycle to get a good night's sleep. And we'll touch on a few things that can actually prevent you getting into that deep sleep today as well. But when this cycle is disrupted, so I suppose if you wake up in that REM or in that deep sleep, that might be when you feel a little bit more tired in the morning. So say if you've woken up in the middle of a dream, you might feel a little bit more groggy than if you can naturally come out of that sleep. So how much sleep do we really need? And this is going to be different for everyone. You know, newborns need a lot more sleep. And as generally as we start to get older, we need less and less sleep. So I imagine most of you here are adults, and that's generally 7 to 9 sleeps. Again, everyone's different. Some people will function really well on 7, where some people feel really tired, really groggy, and so they might need more towards that 9 hours of sleep. So again, everyone's different, but generally we do have 4 to 6 of those sleep cycles that are 90 to 120 minutes long.
So I'm going to talk to you about the circadian rhythm. So what is it? So circadian rhythm is it's a natural 24-hour cycle. It's controlled by our brain's master clock, and it runs subconsciously. It's not something we need to think about, and it's responsible for the essential body and brain functions that our body does. It's our awake and sleep cycle, and it follows this circadian rhythm. So it's this internal master clock, and it takes cues from our environment, so what we're doing. It also takes the cues from light or dark. So it will naturally make us feel tireder when it's darker. It will naturally make us feel more awake when it's lighter. And when we're aligned to this circadian rhythm, so when we're going to bed, when it's dark, when we're waking up, when it's light, we have a much more restful sleep. And I think many people will notice if they have been working nights, they perhaps don't sleep as well in the day as they do when it's dark. And that's the reason, because our body is conditioned to follow this, you know, dark is nighttime, day is time for being awake. And what happens is, as our body clock starts to approach nighttime, we start to produce something called melatonin. And this is a hormone that triggers sleep. So we'll start to feel tired naturally as it gets to the evening. And in the morning, it also sends a signal to make us more alert. So that's when we tend to wake up. And you've probably noticed this more now, you know, we're possibly a bit more active now. It's summer in the evenings, doing a bit more at 8 or 9 o'clock, still got a bit more energy, whereas in the winter, come 8 or 9 o'clock in the evening, we tend to don't do too much. We just want to stay at home. When we're not aligned to our sleep awake cycle, that's when the quality of our sleep can suffer. So if we're not sticking to that, it also throws off other essential functions that are controlled by the brain, including the immune system and the metabolism as well. That will also be affected if we're not following that circadian rhythm.
So thinking about what can cause difficulties with sleep, it can be a whole range of different issues. So we're going to think a bit more about what some of these are. And as we go on with today's presentation, we'll speak about ways that you can manage that as well. So stress and anxiety can be a big block for sleeping, just because when we feel stressed or when we feel anxious, you know, the body has a physical reaction, so it becomes aroused. And what happens then, you know, if our bodies feels active, you know, it wants to be active, it's going to be a lot harder to get to sleep, because sleep's much more about slowing down and resting. So if you're thinking about, you know, the stressful day, or kind of worrying about what the next day might hold, that could really impact your sleep. Pain is a big one as well, because if you're finding it hard to get comfortable in bed, then of course it's going to be really hard to get to sleep. You know, your focus keeps coming back to that pain, you can't get comfortable, so it can really impact how easily you kind of get settled and start to fall asleep. And then depression as well. When someone is experiencing symptoms of depression, sleep can be really difficult. You know, it can be really disturbed, maybe it's really hard to get to sleep. Or maybe you're waking up earlier in the morning and finding it really hard to get back to sleep. And then that makes it hard to get up in the morning. And generally, if you find yourself getting up later, it's harder to go to bed earlier as well, because I suppose your sleep cycle gets disturbed. Your surroundings as well have a really big impact on sleep. So if your bedroom's too hot or too cold, and I know during the summer months, a lot of people have bedrooms that get too hot and they find it quite hard to get to sleep. And then again, if you're too cold, it's hard to get comfortable to really drift off to sleep. Maybe your bed's too hard or too soft, especially if you're used to sleeping in your bed and then sleeping away in a different bed. You might find it hard to get to sleep when you're staying away. And then if the room is too noisy, again, it's going to be really hard to get settled into sleep. And again, as Nicola said, if it's too light, that can really impact on your sleep as well. If you don't have almost a set sleep schedule, that can be really difficult, because your body's an incredible thing. It's really good at making associations and getting into routines and rhythms. So when you're in a good sleep schedule, generally you might find yourself getting tired at the same time, going to bed and then falling asleep, and then naturally waking up at the time you want to wake up. But if this gets disturbed, again, it comes back to impacting on that circadian rhythm. So we don't have that steady routine. Our body's not quite sure when it should be going to sleep. And of course, if you're working shifts, or especially night shifts, that can really throw off that circadian rhythm. And then electronic devices can be really bad. Games, consoles, televisions, a lot of them contain blue light in the screens, which actually activates a part of our brain that encourages us to be awake. So that's one thing that can make a big difference. Caffeine. A lot of people don't realize actually how long caffeine stays in our system. So it activates the body and it makes it harder to get to sleep. And then alcohol as well. It can stimulate the brain, but also it can stop us getting into those deeper stages of sleep as well that we need to feel a little bit more restored as well.
So Tom's just spoken about what can cause sleep problems. So what are the issues that we might see people having with their sleep? So we've identified some of the common ones. So first one I've got is I can't get to sleep. So this is where we're lying awake in bed. We're tired, we've gone to bed, but our heads just won't switch off. We're worrying, we're thinking about what we should have done today. We're thinking about what we need to do tomorrow. We just can't switch our brains off. The next one we've got is when we have slept, we've slept for a good 9 hours, but we still don't feel refreshed. We're still waking up feeling tired. We haven't had that restorative sleep. So we've probably not been through those cycles, those stages of sleep that Tom's already spoken about earlier. And the next one I've got is, I can't stay asleep. So, falling asleep, but keep waking up. Small, quiet things keep disturbing me. And then it's taken me hours to get back to sleep. So this can be often linked to stress, which means we don't complete those 4 stages of sleep. And we're often waking up because we're in that higher sense of arousal. So we keep waking up to the little things that we'd normally have slept through before. So perhaps somebody driving past, a cat outside, anything can wake us up, and then we struggle to get back off. The next one we've got is no matter what time I go to bed, I always wake up at 4 a.m. and just can't get back to sleep. I hear this a lot, and it's normally some random time. I keep seeing 3:27 on my clock every time I wake up at that time. Again, this can be linked back to stress, and then it's normally stress that stops us going back to sleep. So we'll have woken up and then we're worrying about getting back to sleep. And it's that worry about getting back to sleep that ironically is keeping us awake then. We get stuck in that cycle.
So how does poor sleep actually affect us? So research has shown that, if we have poor sleep for prolonged periods of time, or even if it stretches to insomnia, it does have a negative effect on both our mental health and our physical health. So when we feel more tired, our concentration is worse. It can increase your risk of accidents, but it can also affect your productivity kind of at work, or your ability to engage in things you'd normally want to engage in. It can impact your mood negatively. Maybe you feel a little bit more irritable. It can impact on your immune system, and it can also lead to, in the long term, high blood pressure, weight gain, increased risk of heart disease and diabetes. And again, if your body is not working the way it should be, if you're not getting that restorative sleep, it can have that effect on both the body and the mind. So those of you who joined us on Tuesday for the behavioral activation and mindfulness presentation might remember what we said about CBT in terms of how our thoughts, emotions, behavior, and physical feelings interact with each other to cause or maintain a problem. And as Nicola was saying, quite often it's that worry about sleep or that thinking about sleep that actually stops us getting to sleep. So we might think, I won't get to sleep tonight, which leads us to feel a little bit more anxious. So we become a little bit more agitated, tossing and turning. So again, we feel less relaxed, and we're kind of moving away from that feeling of relaxation that helps us go into sleep. So the more we actually think about trying to sleep and getting to sleep, the harder it is to get to sleep.
So why is good sleep so important? Well, the reasons are there's many, but I'll go through the main ones here. It helps us to maintain a stronger immune system, so it's going to keep us well. If we're not sleeping well, we'll struggle to fight off bugs and viruses. It's really good for our health and our immune system. It increases our social and emotional intelligence. So there's been lots of studies that have shown that we're more likely to lack emotional empathy when deprived of sleep. So in other words, we're going to be quite irritable and quite grumpy if we've not had a good night's sleep. It's also linked to maintaining a healthy weight as well, and probably for many reasons, but sleep deprivation increases our appetite and leading for cravings for food high in sugar and fat. And quite often, I'm sure a lot of you can relate, if you've had a bad night's sleep, you'll probably want some biscuits with your coffee in the morning because you feel like you need that bit of energy. We tend to reach for sugary things when we're tired. We're more productive and we focus and concentrate better when our brain has had a restorative sleep. We work much more effectively. It actually lowers our risk of heart disease. If sleep deprivation is a long-term issue, it can lead to high blood pressure and then an increased chance of heart disease. And it boosts our general well-being, so it's really good for our mental health. It can reduce our anxiety and depression. I've worked with a lot of people with mental health issues who actually, if they're not sleeping well, it's a real trigger, and their anxiety, their mood is much worse the next day if they're not sleeping well. So it has a huge impact on our well-being.
So now for the bit you probably all joined today's presentation for. How can you improve on your sleep? So we're going to speak about a few different things, starting with relaxation, sleep hygiene, and one of the most important things, thinking again about that cycle of stuckness, stop trying to get to sleep. So if we think a bit more about how anxiety and stress impact upon our sleep, and just thinking about anxiety and stress, first of all, our bodies are designed to pick up on threats. Thousands of years ago, before we lived in, safe cities, we needed this for our survival every day. And this is the amygdala that's really in charge of this. And if you think about that kind of fight or flight response, you might have heard of it before, but it's actually what happens. A real threat would trigger this. Say if a great big grizzly bear was to burst into your room, rightly so, you're going to be terrified. But also an imagined threat can have that same response. So if you are thinking about what could happen the next day or a stressful situation you've got coming up, your body will still have that same stress response. And when we feel more anxious or when we feel more stressed, we have a more overactive, threat detection. So we're more likely to pick up on threats, or maybe we'll think about threats that might actually not be there, or we might underestimate our ability to actually cope with the threats that might be there. So what symptoms might you notice? You might feel headaches, muscle tension, maybe pain, especially if you're really tensing your muscles, you're more likely to notice any aches and pains. And generally that's in your big muscle groups, so your shoulders, your back, your neck, your chest, maybe your legs and the tops of your arms. You might notice kind of rapid breathing, finding it quite hard to catch your breath. You might feel a little bit dizzy. Might feel maybe butterflies in your stomach, or maybe feel a little bit sick, increased heart rate. You might find yourself needing to go to the toilet a little bit more, and you might have problems with your sleep as well. And these are all natural responses to a threat. It's all part of that system that's supposed to keep yourself safe. If you're going to run away from something or fight something, you need all these things to happen to deal with that threat. But when you're trying to sleep, it can be a little bit more difficult because there might not be a threat there. It might be that more imagined threat that's coming up, or maybe it's that frustration around not getting to sleep that can feed these symptoms. So we've spoken about that side. So thinking about more the other side, actually learning to relax. So when we do feel stressed, when we do feel anxious, our bodies feel tense. And that makes us feel more uncomfortable. Our heart rate's going faster. So again, it's hard to get comfortable. We might feel a little bit restless and notice more worries about trying to get to sleep. And when we have those aches and pains as well, or those symptoms of anxiety, that can make us feel more anxious about them. And again, that can make it harder to sleep too. So what we want to think about is actually, how can we reverse this response and help the body slow down so you can start to get to sleep? And that's what we call the relaxation response. So what this does is just helps to slow down the system. It's almost telling your body that we're not in danger. We don't need to be anxious. We don't need to have this system activated. So by learning to turn the body towards relaxation, that helps to reduce those symptoms of tension. And you can't be tense and relaxed at the same time. So actually learning to relax the body will help you just feel a little bit more rested and help you then drop off to sleep. So the relaxation response was discovered by Herbert Benson in the 1970s, a professor at Harvard, and he described it as a physical state of deep rest that changes the physical and emotional responses to stress, and it's the opposite of that fight or flight response. So as we've already mentioned, that fight or flight response was very important in protecting us from predators, and it still helps us to escape danger within our environment now. But often it can be triggered by chronic stress and anxiety disorders rather than those threats that we do need to escape or to deal with. So obviously, if our body is activated, it's going to disrupt our sleep. So that relaxation response is again just about slowing the body down, slowing the breathing rate, the heart rate. And that helps the body and the mind to feel less stressed and actually stops the production of those stress hormones. And it makes it easier to get into those stages of sleep, especially into that first stage of restful sleep. So how can we relax? There's a lot of different ways to relax. We had our mindfulness presentation on Tuesday, so that can be really helpful for helping us relax. But there's also a lot of other techniques such as progressive muscle relaxation, diaphragm breathing, guided imagery, and these all trigger that relaxation response. But we can relax in other ways. Some people relax through exercise, whether that's going to the gym, yoga, going for a run. Maybe it's your hobby, so you find reading relaxing, sports, gardening, collecting stamps, whatever is your hobby, whatever helps you feel better after a difficult day or a difficult week. Going for a walk. But it could be also, a night or a day out. So that's not, a big night out in town. That could be more, going to the cinema, the theatre, the restaurant, watching sport, trip to a local beauty spot. So some of these things, while you're doing them, will get you activated, but they help you to relax and help you switch off as well. Again, more suggestions: walking a dog, seeing friends, meditation, yoga, planning and cooking a meal, video games, playing, listening to music. We're all different. And it's like Nicola would have said, again, for those who attended on Tuesday, we all have different activities. So some people like cooking, some people don't. So it's all relevant to you. So if you feel happy to share, just pop in the chat, what is it that you do to help you relax? And we can come back to those a little bit later on. But we're just going to go through a nice relaxation technique to help you sleep now. So before we start this, I'm just going to explain what we're going to do and why we're going to do it. So in terms of why, quite often when we do breathe, we're not using the full capacity of our lungs, especially when we feel stressed or anxious. So that can make us feel breathless, and that then impacts on our oxygen and carbon dioxide levels as well. So this technique, diaphragm breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, belly breathing, it's got lots of different names. I suppose what you really need to know is how to do it. So first of all, when we start, we're going to take a big exhale all that stale air, and then we're going to breathe in for 7 seconds, and then we're going to breathe out for 11. I'll keep the count for the first few breaths and encourage you then to try a few on your own. And wherever you are, whether you're sat down, lying down, stood up, have one hand on your stomach, one hand on your chest, and each time you take an in breath, just try and imagine that you're blowing up a big balloon in your stomach. I will say again before we start, if 7 and 11 is too long for you, some people might find it hard to breathe that long, just bring it down by a second. Again, if that's too much for you, again, bring it down just to make it more comfortable for yourself. So getting set up, getting comfortable, and just taking that big exhale first of all. And then breathe in, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. In, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. In, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And just try a few breaths on your own now, keeping that slow count. Just coming back at the end of your next out breath. Let us know how you found that. Was there anywhere in your body where you start to feel a bit more relaxed, or you noticed any release of tension? Again, if you do feel comfortable sharing, please just pop it in the chat.
And there is a couple of comments in the chat that'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on. So somebody has put, I find this type of breathing quite stressful. It makes my shoulders tense. What your thoughts are there?
I think techniques like this can work different for everyone. And I suppose, is it the fact that it makes your shoulders tense stressful, or is...
I think there's probably different relaxation techniques you could do. So if you've got tension in your shoulders, probably a progressive muscle one would be better rather than the breathing one. It sounds like there's tension there. If you're breathing in, your shoulders are going up, there's probably already tension there in your shoulders. So probably something needed to do on there. I've seen there's a couple that have come up that said it's made them feel quite dizzy doing this. This is really common if we've taken too much of a deep breath in and not breathed out enough, because our levels are out of balance. So it might be adjusting and doing a different breathing technique. So it's kind of changing the numbers slightly to get a different, so you're not breathing in too much and you're breathing out for shorter as well. So it's just adjusting it. There's loads of different techniques on YouTube that you can have a look at. It's about finding one that works for you. You will find one that works for you, but it's about trial and error. Yeah. Was there any other questions that's worth answering now?
Well, there are a few questions which I can ask if you would like, but there is another comment that states, I can't hold my breathing for that long as my peak flow is extremely low due to asthma. So just any thoughts on what else would be useful?
I think, yeah, so a progressive muscle again would be good. So it's different to the relaxation breathing, but it's a method of relaxing your body. So you're tensing and releasing different muscles in your body, or perhaps even mindfulness might be quite good, but focusing not on your breath, on your hands or your feet. So a different form of relaxation would be good. It's going to have the same effect, as in it's going to bring down your fight or flight response. It's going to release anxiety and stress, but it's about finding a way that fits with you. There will be something, but it's about finding the right one.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And as I said, there are questions, so it's entirely up to you. I can ask a couple now, or we can wait until the end of the session.
I guess if they're linked to the breathing exercise, it might be good to do that now.
Not linked to the breathing, no.
Okay, should we wait to the end?
Yeah,
if that's okay. So we're going to go on to sleep hygiene. Before we do that, I guess I just want to say, with the relaxation breathing, a lot of people underestimate how effective it is, but actually once you're doing it regularly, it has a huge impact on your stress levels, on your mental health. And if you are struggling to sleep, I would urge you to have a look at doing some relaxation exercises. So whether that is relaxation breathing like the 7-11 that we've done here, or I know there's lots of different apps that you can have on, if you've got smartphones and things that you can download that guide you through a breathing exercise. They're fantastic. Or mindfulness as well. Anything that's going to just reduce your stress levels will be brilliant for getting a better night's sleep. So have a look into what's out there. It's a really, really effective way of improving your sleep, working on your stress levels with relaxation. So sleep hygiene is important for everyone from childhood through to adulthood. A good sleep hygiene routine promotes healthy sleep, daytime alertness. Good sleep hygiene practices prevent the development of sleep problems and disorders. So this is about, preventative, getting in there before we've got sleep issues. Having that good sleep routine will be a really good way of stopping us getting into bad habits with our sleep or any disturbances. So, and these are some suggestions for sleep hygiene. So fixing your bedtime and awakening time. So trying to go to bed at a similar time and waking up at a similar time, and probably even at the weekends, that can really help with sleep as well. A lot of people go to bed a lot later at the weekends and wake up a lot later. That's going to put us out of balance. So trying to stick to similar times would be really helpful. So we've been talking about napping earlier. I think there's a couple of messages on there. We had a message about the nana nap, but avoid napping during the day. The late afternoon is when we do tend to feel quite sleepy, and many people will take a nap. And actually, it's not a bad thing, but if you can limit it to about 30 to 45 minutes. So yeah, we can go for the disco nap or whatever you want to call it, but just limit the time that you are sleeping. Exercise regularly, goes without saying, but not right before bed. So probably in the afternoon, if you can, is a good time. It's going to help your sleep. It's going to help you get you into that deeper sleep, that more restorative sleep if we are exercising. So here we are. I feel like we're promoting lunchtime drinking with this, but avoid alcohol 4 to 6 hours before bedtime. While alcohol has immediate sleep-inducing effect, so quite often people say, "Oh, I always drop off though. If I've had a few glasses of wine or a couple of beers, I get off to sleep straight away." You will do. It will make you more sleepy and you will fall to sleep a lot better. However, there's something that happens with the alcohol levels as they start to drop in your blood. It also gives like a stimulant effect as well, so you won't have a good night rest. You will wake. You might not be aware that you've woken, but you will not have that restorative sleep. It will be disturbed. So yeah, just keep that in mind. Obviously, we're not saying never drink in the evening because that's not going to be realistic. But if you are looking for a good night's sleep, actually drinking before bed is not advisable. Caffeine, I'm sure many of you know that caffeine does affect sleep as well. The suggestion is don't drink coffee 4 to 6 hours before bedtime. Also, tea as well has got caffeine in. A lot of people don't realise that it does. And drinks like Coca-Cola as well, and energy drinks. Anything with caffeine in 4 to 6 hours before bedtime could disturb your sleep. Avoiding heavy, spicy or sugary foods as well 4 to 6 hours before bedtime, as these can also affect your sleep.
I suppose the last things I wanted to add about in terms of sleep hygiene especially is how many people ensure that their children have a very specific, they go to bed at this time, they go up at this time. They might not follow that kind of same rule for themselves as well. So you can see the impact, or the benefit it has for children. So it's also noticing actually how that sleep structure can be really important for you as well. So in terms of your sleeping environment, it's trying to make sure it's the right temperature for you. So obviously, you can't stop it being hot outside, but if there's any things that you can do to help keep your bedroom cool. So I think there's a trick that if you have your curtains closed while the sun's shining through the window, it helps keep the bedroom cool. Personally, I've got a room that never gets warm, so it's a dream, but it could also be having a fan if the noise doesn't disturb your sleep as well. Which I suppose is the next one, trying to block out any distracting noise or eliminating as much light as possible. So maybe if you do work night shifts, having blackout blinds to help you get to sleep during the day. Closing a window if you've got workmen outside or cycling bins are being emptied just as you're going to sleep. And only use the bed for sleep and sex. So don't use your bedroom as an office, as a workroom, as a recreation room. I think a lot of people do this. They use the room for all sorts of things. They might read in there. They might, take calls in there. Might work in there now and then. But again, it's your brain's really good at making associations. So if you start to spend more time in your bed not sleeping, what starts to happen is your brain starts to think, actually, this isn't a place where I sleep. This is a place where my mind's active and I'm engaged in activity. So really just reserving the bed for sleep or sex. And again, TV isn't a great one. I know a lot of people like to drift off to TV or watch TV in bed. But if you are having difficulty with your sleep, then this can really contribute to that as well. Because again, you're making that association between being wakeful and being in bed. And there's also that blue light that television can have as well. So how can you get ready for bed and sleep? There's a few different ways. You could have a light snack before bed. So again, nothing heavy or spicy, alcoholic or caffeineful. Maybe a warm milk or foods high in amino acid tryptophan, bananas included. So that can help you get to sleep. Having any relaxation techniques. So again, that could be the breathing, it could be the progressive muscle relaxation or meditation or mindfulness. So any of these things that help you feel less anxious and reduce muscle tension. And don't take your worries to bed. So leave all your worries about your job, your school, your daily life, what might be coming up tomorrow behind when you go to bed. So some people find it helpful to have a specific worry period during the evening or late afternoon to deal with these issues. And that's not a technique we'll go into too much detail in today's, but also maybe having a bedtime routine. So some people, it's a skincare routine. Some people might have a warm caffeine-free drink, but it's finding that routine that almost signals to you again, okay, this is time to wind down and I'm going to go to sleep after this as well. Yeah, so having that pre-sleep ritual could be a warm bath, could be reading, getting into your favorite sleeping position. If you don't fall asleep within 15 to 30 minutes, get up and go into another room and read until you are asleep, or do something that isn't too engaging. So don't watch TV, don't do any work, don't have a cup of tea. And with this kind of 15 to 30 minutes, it's not watching the clock saying, okay, it's been 15 to 30 minutes, because that clock watching can actually be quite detrimental to your sleep as well. if it feels roughly maybe 15 to 30 minutes, just get up, go into another room. And again, that helps break that association between wakefulness and your bed. And try to avoid watching TV or using your phone in bed. You know, a lot of people take the phone to bed, they have it on the bedside table. But these all can emit that blue light again, which stimulates the brain. So you can switch to a podcast, you could use a book, audio book, use the radio, or just find something else that helps you wind down for the night.
So here's a really common one that comes up, which is getting up in the middle of the night. You know, should we do this or not? So if you do find that you're waking up and in the middle of the night and you can't get back to sleep, actually recommendation is give it 15 to 20 minutes. If you still haven't dropped off, the advice is not to stay in bed trying really hard to get back to sleep, but actually to get up, get out of bed and to leave the bedroom. When you do that, it's almost repeating your bedtime routine again. So perhaps have a milky drink, do something quiet. The suggestion is to take a bath here if you can, or generally find something quiet that's not too stimulating, and then try after about 20 minutes to go back to bed. So don't go and do housework, don't go and do any sort of work, office work. Try something that's quite gentle, perhaps reading just with a lamp on in a different room. Give yourself 15, 20 minutes and then take yourself back to bed. Avoid anything like watching the TV, you know, going downstairs for a cigarette, anything like that, because it's going to be too stimulating. Also picking up your mobile phone or going downstairs to get a coffee. Anything like that is going to start to wake you up again. Quite often people will be on their phones at 2 a.m, you know, oh, I'm awake now, so I may as well order this or that, you know, I haven't had time to do today. That's going to just waking you up properly, and actually what we want is for you to go back to bed and go back to sleep as soon as possible. But actually getting out of bed for a short period of time, doing something quite gentle, something quite quiet, you'll probably find then if you try to go back to bed, you're more likely to drop off than if you've just laid there thinking, I need to get back to sleep, I'm going to get up in 2 hours, I'm going to be tired. It will help if you do get up and leave the bedroom.
So how can I tell if my sleep hygiene is poor? So the most telling signs would be if your sleep is disturbed, you find yourself sleepy throughout the day. And, you know, if you do find that, you know, you are noticing there is a problem in your sleep, it can be really helpful to actually evaluate it. So it's not about, you know, all of a sudden you'll watch this presentation and tonight you'll have the best night's sleep of your life. But it's about making those kind of small changes to your kind of sleep hygiene, and it can take time for those changes to start to have a positive effect as your body starts to get into more of a routine. If you're taking too long to fall asleep, or you find yourself waking up in the night a lot, you should consider actually revising your bedtime habits. And it can be helpful to keep a diary of actually, you know, what makes my sleep worse, what doesn't impact my sleep, what makes my sleep better. So it's about making those small changes if you find that your sleep hygiene is poor.
I love this picture. So the benefits of a good night's sleep: improves your attention and concentration, can help maintain a healthy weight, helps maintain a healthy heart, keeps our immune system strong, so keeps us well. It will reduce our stress. You know, if we've had a really good night's sleep, we're much able to manage the day ahead. Maintains healthy emotional and mental well-being, and it also helps to maintain good relationships. We're much more tolerant, we're much more understanding when we've had a good night's sleep.
So that's everything really from our side. The last thing I want to say is if you did find the presentation helpful, you would like more information around sleep, or maybe, you know, there's other things that impact your sleep, such as worries, anxiety, or depression. We do have a range of other webinars, and you can also contact our service. But just pass you back over to the team. We can answer any questions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. What a brilliant session. And as you will probably be able to see from the chat box, so many people that need this session. So a couple of questions you've already answered. So Nicola, just in case you want to reiterate, there was a question from Nicola Goody. Why can't you sleep for 8 hours, and why can you, sorry, sleep for 8 hours and wake up not feeling refreshed? I know that was touched on during the presentation. So if there's anything that you want to add to that, I know that we've got two Nicolas here. So Nicola Goody was the lady that asked the question.
Yeah. I guess it depends. So say if you've had like a few weeks of really poor sleep, and then one night you do get 8 hours and you're still not feeling great, it could be that you're kind of catching up and you need to get a better sleep routine. It really would depend on the individual, really, that question. And it might be because of if your stress levels are high, you've not had that restorative sleep, you haven't gone into those sort of REM stages because your anxiety or stress has been higher than ideal. So that might be why 8 hours doesn't feel that refreshing for you.
Brilliant, thank you. And Joanne is asking, is there such a thing as too much sleep? Not that she does, she's just curious.
I think there is. I think if you sleep more than you would need to, it actually leads you to feel more tired, more lethargic as well. So it's still about trying to get that optimum amount. Again, it depends on whether you're closer to 7 hours or closer to 9 hours.
And that's a really interesting one for me, because if I ever at weekends sleep for even half an hour longer than I normally do, I wake up with a really bad headache. So that's always been an interesting one for me. Dave is asking, is doing too many night shifts or too many nights a problem? And if yes, should managers or the organisation take some responsibility to ensure a change in pattern?
Well, that's not really down for me and Tom to decide, but I guess there's things that you can help with yourself with if you are on night shift. Like Tom said, having blackout blinds in the room, trying to create that nighttime, those the lamps that start to glow in the morning are really good, I guess, for almost mimicking sunrise for somebody who's working night shift. So that might be quite a good idea. That comes on with the alarm, it starts to get lighter and lighter closer to the alarm. So they're probably ways that you can make working a night shift healthier for you, and not following your natural circadian rhythm. And I guess what you eat as well, so eating when you are doing your night shift, so having a breakfast, lunch and dinner during the night would probably help as well. So kind of mimicking what you would have done in the day.
Brilliant, thank you. And I know that we've already talked about the impact of the disco nap on the quality of overnight sleep. But Anne had heard that there's a podcast about blue light glasses positively reducing the impact of light from screens. What are your thoughts there?
I actually have some blue light glasses. I've not, used them in a way that I can actually say, I sleep better in those nights than those nights. But if, say, after 8:30, 9 p.m, I'm going to be looking at my phone, I will try and use them. Like I say, I can't say if they definitely work, but I've decided to use them just in case they do work. I think there is a lot of research. I just haven't read that much into it. I was told about them by someone I trusted.
Absolutely, thank you. I'm just looking through. We've got so many comments in the chat. Why can you feel more tired sleeping more hours than having a shorter sleep? I always feel more tired if I get a chance to have a lay-in, is one of the questions.
And that might be because of that circadian rhythm. So that's a bit out of balance. The recommendation is to kind of have fixed sort of sleep times and wake up times. So that can be why, when we've had a lay in, we get up sort of at 10 or 11 or something. We can tend to feel a bit more tired and groggy than we would have done had we got up at 7. So that can be the reason why.
And I think it's also where you are in your sleep cycle. So quite often you might wake up naturally and then be like, oh yeah, there's 15 minutes till my alarm goes off, and then you go to sleep, and when your alarm goes off you actually feel much more tired. So it's just could be where you are in your sleep routine, sleep cycle, when you wake up.
Yeah, and that's why I don't press the snooze button anymore, because I was experiencing that very thing. So Melanie's husband is a lorry driver and the shifts are random and long. Tips to relax when there is no time other than to change jobs.
I would say doing some, relaxation breathing or mindfulness, anything like that, because you don't have to do it for long, sort of 5 or 10 minutes. It's just going to bring that tension down, that stress response. And I think a lot of people feel like, well, I probably don't need to relax because I'm not stressed. And they're linking that with not having panic or high levels of anxiety. Actually, we're all carrying a stress around. You know, our day-to-day lives are so busy. Just recharging, doing some relaxation breathing would probably help him then to be able to get into sleep when he does need to.
Okay, fantastic, thank you. And Amy's asking, you mentioned with alcohol the sugar levels drop when you sleep. I wonder, is this the same in people with diabetes? If their sugars are not well controlled, would this affect sleep too?
I don't think it's the same because it's the alcohol level as that adjusts. It's not the sugar level, I think. So, I don't know if I'm qualified enough to answer that question, but I don't think it's the same. Tom, do you know?
I don't think I'm qualified to answer that question.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you. And Owen is asking, with how much, and I can absolutely relate to this question, with how much we're now working from home with limited options for space, is there any way to partition a bedroom off so you can still make the mental distinction between where you sleep and where you work?
I think that's, I suppose, down to each person mentally. Because when I first was working from home, I would work in my bedroom, but in my head, the space I worked was a separate space from my bed. So I think if you're working from your bed, that's going to be really problematic. And I suppose it depends on how your mind works. If you make that partition, so maybe you're looking away from your bed, or you're not looking the same direction you'd look out of your bed. So it's a tricky one. And it might be different for everyone. I don't know what your thoughts were on that, Nicola.
Yeah, no, I agree with what you've said. Yeah, it's difficult. I guess you've just kind of got to make it work for you, but trying to get it so it does feel different. There's a place for work and there's a place for sleeping, and you can. I've just seen a question from Lucy on the chat, which I think is quite a good one. If I can just jump to that, it's I get 5 hours and sometimes have another hour or hour and a half to then get back to sleep at night. I've tried a lot of the suggestions that we've gone through, but it's the waking up and taking such a long time to get back to sleep that is tricky. Maybe a diary would help. What sort of things would I need to keep track of? I've picked that one because that's really common issue that people have, waking in the night and then struggling to get back to sleep. A diary would help, but it might help to write in there before you go to sleep. So, I mean, the idea is that you're not waking. So actually taking out what you've got going around in your head, putting it on paper so you can see it all. Sometimes we're trying to spin everything in the head so we remember it and we don't forget and we can keep track of it. So writing it down before you go to bed can help, especially if you've got some worries, that could help. And then doing a bit of relaxation before you go to sleep. And then if you do wake up in the night and you've got new worries, writing them down, doing a bit of relaxation, and hopefully that will get you back off to sleep as well.
Fantastic. And Owen is asking, I'm sure a few of us have to be on call 24 hours a day sometimes. Is there any way to balance this being the case while still maintaining good sleep hygiene?
I think it's partially, I suppose it's going back to what Nick said about last one. If you're having worries about, will I get woken up tonight by a call or this, it's maybe kind of trying to park those worries. And then maybe you do get a call in the middle of the night, and it might be particularly stressful depending on what you're on call for. But then you can try and use those relaxation techniques to try and get back to sleep, once that call is done or once it's been actioned. But I think it's a tricky one because you don't know when you're going to wake up. So it's, I suppose, part of it's not worrying about that uncertainty. But again, it's really tricky one to answer if your phone's pinging all night, or maybe it won't ping all night. I don't know. Any thoughts, Nicola?
Yeah, I think it's trying to manage that uncertainty, isn't it? And uncertainty is always a trigger for anxiety. It will always put us on edge. Again, keep coming back to it, a bit of relaxation before you go to bed, and perhaps a bit of relaxation or breathing after you've taken a call as well, just to reset yourself, to recharge yourself. That might help kind of getting you back to sleep as well after you have had a call.
Yeah, brilliant. And I imagine it'd be the same answer. We've got another one, any help, or I imagine tips for shift workers. I imagine that would be a similar thing.
yeah, I guess, yeah, what we've already said. So trying to mimic nighttime if you are sleeping during the day, and just looking after yourself. So actually relaxing before you go to bed, and just having a good bedtime routine, even if you are going to bed at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Brilliant. So one more question, but there are loads of comments in the chat. Lots of people kind of sharing their own hints and tips, such as the nighttime light that you can put onto your phones and things like that. But our final question: I have a back condition, which means I have to turn constantly through the night. When I move in pain, am I not getting to the full cycle, and how can I help this cycle?
I think it depends how often you have to kind of turn over for your back. So it could be that you could have a full cycle and then you hit that moment of wakefulness, and that means you wake up because of the pain and roll over. It's 30 minutes to an hour. I'm not entirely sure. I think it's trying to get into a cycle where you can, but I suppose sometimes with pain, we find ourselves very focused on pain when naturally it's a distressing feeling. But Nicola mentioned earlier when we were speaking about the breathing, almost trying to bring the attention somewhere else in the body and be mindful of that and see if that makes any impact. But I think it's a really tricky one. It must be times it must be really difficult.
Absolutely. But really, really interesting when you get a chance, have a look through that chat box, because it's great to see so many people sharing their own hints and tips around the best way to use phones, for example, and the best way to get a good night's sleep. So thank you so much, and I'll hand back over to Chris and Dave.
Cheers, Dawn. Thanks very much. Excellent session. I'm just going to hand back to Chris, and then I'll share the last few slides. But over to you, Chris.
Yeah, just a huge thank you to both of you, to Thomas and Nicola. I found that very insightful and helpful. Lots of things I'm going to have to take away. I think I've thought about it previously, but I think the idea of maybe doing some relaxation before you go to bed, and the piece at the end about, I often write things down and wake up in the night, but I guess trying to jot them down before you go to bed and go upstairs can be really helpful. And then obviously in the night. Well, I think, as you say, thinking about how you can relax before you go to bed. And I clearly need to make sure electronic devices away a time before you go to bed. So they're obvious things, but in some ways they are. But I think that was so helpful. And to hear, I was also fascinated by the four sections of sleep, and that you need them all. And I just think there's masses there for us all to think about, to help us all. So just a fabulous session. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you for having us.
Cheers, Chris. Thanks very much. And Nicola and Thomas, once again, please, before you leave today, go into that chat box, because so much love as well, but there's so many great resources and information. And obviously we can't ask every single question. So please go in there and feel free to have a peruse around. So I'm going to share just a final couple of screens before we all say our goodbyes, or before we go and get our liker on and get ready for Mr. Motivator soon. But with all we do today is about you. It is about you, and it is okay not to be okay. And some of the people in the chat box now, discussing some of the things, it's very courageous, and that's that first step sometimes to asking for help. And even with Nicola and Thomas sharing so much information today, some people might have sat there and gone, actually, I do feel like I need to ask someone, and that's okay. So stick your hand out, reach out virtually, phone call, face to face, whatever it might be. And we got some of the information on the screen in front of you. The courageous thing is taking that step and saying, I think I need a little bit of support. What that looks like, it doesn't matter. But that's what we're here to do across the system. We are all here to support each other. I clicked on the wrong screen, but there we go. There's no such thing as failure, only feedback. So give us feedback, okay? Good, positive, whatever it might be. I never said negative because I don't believe in that. So anything developmental opportunity, then let's do that. And if you do, and you've got one of those funky dunky phones, click the QR code there on your smartphones, and automatically you'll be into the competition for that free gift of the happy news. So please use that. I did see someone in the chat box just recently said they came across this on Facebook about this session. So please use your QR code again, because the QR code, I'm breaking these teeth in for a donkey, the QR code, and use it, because there is so many resources out there that you can share with all your friends, your colleagues, your loved ones, whoever it might be, because the resource is only good if we know where they are. Or you can go to our Wellbeing Festival Live website, where all this will be recorded, every single session that's gone on this week, for you to go and use and share. And as the lady had put in the chat box there, that she saw it on Facebook, quickly take a picture of that on there. There's the rest of the day, and there's the rest of the information that's been on all week for you to go back and watch on the Wellbeing Festival Live website, and use that QR code again. But it is time to get your jog on, get ready for Mr. Motivator later on. He's our last guest speaker this week. For those on the Down with the Kids and social media stuff, please, let's get this trending on the last day. That would be an absolute dream, to make all those people nosy and wonder what it's about. So use that hashtag VWBF22 and share your thoughts. But thank you very much to Chris, Thomas and Nicola for all the inputs on the session today. And thank you to all those who attended for being so courageous and being authentic and sharing what's gone on with your maybe how to sleep better, or even your personal sleep issues. But have a great morning. Go and get your spandex and your Lycra on, and I'll see you at 12 o'clock for Mr. Motivator. But thank you very much.